undeniable. I think we'll all have some questions for you, but I think I'll start my question with the camera work is so intentional and character oriented. I'm curious to know how you thought that through, because on the one hand, there's this looseness to it, this very cinema verite, and then there's moments that are incredibly designed and painterly. So curious to know the thinking behind that.
Do I even need a microphone? I feel like I can just
talk like this. Do you want me to do a microphone?
Yeah.
Can you guys all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I feel like I don't
Yeah.
maybe need this.
That's great.
Who can I give this to?
Yeah, here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our DP K2, Kristen Corral, whose mom is Steven.
Yeah.
She's amazing, but it was her first movie too, and my first movie. So it was, we had a little bit of an idea what we were doing, but it was also COVID. It was super low budget, so we really had constraints on what we could actually achieve. But we just spent so much time talking through kind of every character had a different, style with how we were filming them, and every moment. Obviously, the bathroom stall was kind of like that was the turning point. Everything after that had like a different look with the color and with the feel of the camera. And anytime we were with Jenna, that was like a totally different feel as well. So it was very intentional, but there was also like just a lot of camera things that we wanted to do that we couldn't afford. And so we were just going with the flow. The movie was made for $1 million, so it was pretty scrappy, which sounds like a lot of money. When they were like, we're gonna give you $1 million to make a movie, I was really stoked. And then I found out it's not that much money to make.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely like just a lot of, we probably spent like 3 or 4 months just talking, and we didn't like storyboard out every single shot because it was so low budget and things were shifting so much. We got shut down with COVID. There was only so much planning that could go into what we were doing. But I think after the first couple of days of really getting a feel for the actors and just sort of the pacing of things, that really helped us lock in kind of the feel.
Yeah, it's really solid. Just a follow up here. Did you know when you were working on the composition of the shots? Did you have a sense like this is going to cut a certain way? Were you thinking ahead editorially?
I would say I just shot my second feature, and I would say I did that. I learned so much in the edit of this movie about how to make a movie. We only edited the movie in 4 weeks, which was also kind of crazy looking back. I don't know how we did that. I think we just edited my film in like 4 months, which is much more achievable, the second film. So I would say watching this now, is like, had I known what I knew about the editing process, I would have done a lot of things differently in this. And I did approach how I directed my second movie a lot more with like how things would cut, because I just didn't know. I'd only ever shot music videos, a short film, so I certainly didn't have a real sense of how things went down in the edit. I would say that K2, our DP, brought more to the table in terms of, she was the one being like, is this gonna cut? Because her brother is an editor, she just understands that process a lot more than I did. So I relied heavily. We also didn't have an editor during the filming of the movie, which is we didn't have the budget for it, but that's often a luxury to have an editor watching daily, is like telling you what's working, what's not working. So I really, a lot of credit goes to K2 on that. She definitely had a better understanding of how things were gonna cut.
And just so everyone knows, this was actually the first time you've seen your film projected like this.
Ever, yeah. Yeah. It was really cool for me. I have to say, and the bathroom stall scene was way fucking scarier on the big screen. Yeah, it's weird. I was just thinking as the movie ended, I wrote this movie, probably started in 2018, finished writing it in 2019, and I'm just like so floored at how topical it still feels. And it's weird because, I didn't make this movie with the intention of being like, I'm gonna make this movie and like make all this money off of it. And like I just made it because I was so fucking horrified at what was happening.
Yeah.
And it's been weird to like promote the movie, because I even just watching, I'm like, fuck, I wish they could like show more people this movie, because, it just seems like such a problem of the now, unfortunately still. But you don't want to walk around being like, you should watch this movie that I made. But I hope that like people that want to see it, can see it, because fuck, it's crazy how topical it still is.
It really is, and it's such a smart way to get at the shooting through the characters' lives rather than just the shooting event itself, which we've seen other movies kind of go after that event as like a key sort of focal point of the film. How did you conceive of the story?
Well, just talking about like that bathroom stall scene, the movie changed so much from the script to the footage that you get to the edit. It's always like a totally different thing. But one thing that never really changed was the bathroom stall scene or the ending of the movie. Like I always knew that was how the movie had to end, and that was, you know, I got a lot of pushback on how that bathroom scene should be filmed. You know, from the process of selling the movie, like early on in the script, people either wanted to make it more about the shooting, or they were really scared of that, or can you just shoot something in the hallway? Can we just get a glimpse of like this? And I was just very adamant that I never wanted to go there. And I talked to every town, a lot of organizations while I was writing the movie or after I finished writing it to make sure, because I really didn't want it to be triggering. I wanted it to be alarming enough that you understand the severity of the situation, but not graphic or gory. So that was really important to me throughout the process. But honestly, I feel like I'm learning about myself as a writer and director. And like I said, I just made my second movie, but I just, I wrote a lot from like the feeling of frustration and how I would feel being a teenager in America now. I'm not a teenager and I grew up in Canada, so I had a very different experience. I certainly was never scared to go to school every day. I was never scared of getting shot at school, but I was just thinking like, I would be too scared to ever go to school, truthfully. Right now, I really would. I still would to this day. I just had a kid. She's 3 now, and the debate between me and my husband was like, do we move back to Canada under school? It's a very real fear for me. So it really was just born out of that. And Veda was very much like how I feel I would have reacted. And then the other characters just kind of came to me. And once I'd come up with Quentin and Mia and Veda, I wrote the story pretty quickly in about 2 weeks.
Amazing. And how about the prescience of your casting? I mean, you really just did such an amazing job there. How did that come together?
Well, a lot of people think that Shailene Woodley is a friend of mine who we did a TV show together for many years, and they're like, "Did you get Shay?" And then you got the money for the movie. But it was not that way actually. We didn't have any cast when we got the financing, and Francia Raisa, who was on Secret Life with me, had read the script just as a friend, and was like, "Oh God, have you heard of this girl Jenna Ortega?" They were friends, and she was like, "I think she'd be so great as Veda," and so we sent the script to her, and me and her just had coffee, and she brought her mom. She was like 16 or 17, and we just sat down and talked. And she was the first person I met with for the role, and just within 5 minutes, I was like, "Oh yeah, like this girl's perfect." And at that point, I think she was filming that like Jennifer Garner movie, like Yes Day, where she was like a 14-year-old or something, and it was really itching to sort of break out of the Disney thing and really responded to the material. And I mean, talk about finding somebody at the right moment. It was pretty incredible. And I mean, I think from day one, everybody was just kind of like, "Oh shit." I was very relieved because I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about Jenna. She's got it. I can worry about all the other things. And she was, every frame of her was so unbelievably usable, which is not always the case.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah,
Let's get some questions from everyone else. David.
Sorry, I'm all the way in the back, but
Okay.
I'll project. Kind of like what John was asking about originally. You know, we see a lot of movies with lower budgets, $1 million, $2 million and under. But you really seem to have a very discerning eye when you're shooting. We don't really see like a lot of coverage on these movies, but you shot in such a way that it's like not noticeable, or it's just very unique. Can you talk a little about how you would choose your shots and what kind of planning went into it?
I think we started with a list of what do we need to get to make the scene usable. And then because it was during COVID, it was so crazy. Like I was in a back room directing most of the movie from a monitor. It was like pre-vaccine COVID. It was September 2020. So I think we were the first movie to go back up and film in LA post-pandemic, middle of the pandemic. And so we couldn't go into overtime. It was very, very quick, and it was not a lot of communication. It was tricky. Like just shooting the movie I did now, I'm like, how did I do that? I don't know how it happens, but because it was so low budget, there was like a really small crew, and everybody was really there because they believed in it. I think that really helped with the time. But honestly, it was so crazy fast. Like it was just like, what do we need to get? I like being tight in on people, so I would always prioritize that before getting like a establishing shot of the scene. Or we didn't get a lot of like masters and stuff because I was just like, you just want to be in, especially with someone like Jenna, like you just want to be up in her face the whole time. So that was always like the priority for me. and I came from the acting side of it, and especially with young actors, like you just want to get it when it's fresh. So a lot of times, like it was like 2 takes, check the focus, we're good, and we moved on. So it was just sort of going with the gut a little bit on that.
Kind of building off of that, how much rehearsal time did you have, if any? I know you said that none.
0. It was pretty nuts.
How many days of shoot?
We shot it in 15 days.
And no overtime.
And we could only shoot one night shoot, and we had to finish by 12 p.m. So that night shoot in the parking lot, that was the only. All those scenes with Mia were written at their house, like out by the pool. That was all supposed to be nighttime, but because like they couldn't get cops to come on location because of COVID, it was like a whole thing. So we had one nighttime shoot, and we had like 4 hours, 3 hours of darkness really to get it. We had like a Zoom read through with the actors, which was like ridiculous because like someone's service was bad and the whole thing kind of like movie remembers. And then we had a little bit of time just talking to the actors like over Zoom. Jenna and I probably spent like 3 hours talking over Zoom before, but the actors never got to meet each other. I didn't hug Jenna or Matt or any of the actors, I don't think, until months after the shoot. Yeah, it was not a typical set environment for sure.
Yeah, please.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is that first scene is such a gut punch, and I was wondering if you did film that in sequence to give the actors the opportunity to experience that at the beginning and give them the arc, or if it was so strong that you did not film that at the beginning for them. That was my first question.
I wanted to shoot it at the beginning for that reason that you said. We shot those are the last 2 days of filming. It was just like when we could get the high school. It was all totally location dependent. So that was, we broke it up
Right.
over the 2 days.
Yeah.
But actually, no, we shot everything at the school in 2
Yeah.
days. So it was not just those scenes, it was everything. I think, yeah, it was pretty, not a lot of time.
Yeah, that is crazy.
But I mean, those actors were so
Yeah.
good.
So good. Yeah.
And the second question is, I have a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old. So a lot of time when I watch movies with, like parents and children dynamics, I identify with the parent immediately. But sometimes I've made the story is so universal and the feelings are so strong that I'm able to identify with the protagonist as well. And I feel that is just so unique and I just want to thank you because it doesn't happen often because the mom kicks in so much, but I find it so powerful. So I just wanted to thank you and also ask you from your perspective, what is the intention there? Like who are you trying to talk to first and foremost when you're putting so many relationships and dynamics on the screen, like in this film?
Well, it's interesting because I wrote this movie before I had a kid, and then I made it when I had like a newborn baby. So I think that my perspective shifted as well as I was making the movie because I was just like experiencing that for the first time as well, that perspective. But when I wrote, I think I was really trying to make the movie for kids who are in school, who are actually experiencing this and who go through it, first and foremost, and then just trying to be as authentic as possible with, I feel like you don't see a lot of times like these movies focus on like the shooter or the violence or whatever, and it's just because like, you could just be in the bathroom stall and maybe not even witness anything, but just hear it and how that sort of like ripples out and affects everyone in your life and your family. And I wanted to just try to capture with as little time as we could glimpses of everyone's experience, but primarily I wanted it to really feel like Veda's story through and through, and like hopefully for teenagers because they're the like the first victim in this.
Yeah.
So
Can you tell us a little about the music? Was just breathtaking. Phineas, did a great, brilliant cinematic job of.
it's pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah. So, how did that come to be, and what were you thinking when you were shooting? Were you thinking, I'm going to have this musical bed I'm going to work with?
We actually knew like the needle drop that she goes down the stairs with and does that whole thing. We actually had that already,
Mhm.
which was cool, I think, or we like thought we were gonna be able to get it. So
Yeah.
that was the only piece I could kind of film too, which I had a lot of fun with. And Jenna and I like listened to it beforehand. But with Phineas, I had worked with his sister Billy, and I directed a music video for her. So I was like kind of familiar, and I met Phineas kind of in that process. But our music supervisor had worked with Phineas and had a relationship with him,
Mhm.
and we knew that gun reform was a huge thing that he was really passionate about. So we just sent him the script, and he'd never composed anything for movies before, and he just loved the script. It was actually crazy because he was like, I really want to do this, so I'm going on a world tour, and then obviously like COVID happened and everything got shut down, and so then he called and he was like, well, I've got free time, and so it was a really easy process, really. I mean, he basically just was like, cool, send me the movie when it's done, and we sent it to him, and I mean, it was a great back and forth, but he just really believed in the project, and he was more like, I hope I can do this. I was like, I think you got it. You're gonna be fine. So he was very humble about it, but yeah, it was really interesting, and I think what he added to the film is so incredible, and he has such a youthfulness, and I think it's actually really cool that he isn't like a composer who he just approached it with such a fresh energy, which I think was helpful to the film.
Yeah, getting like that that sense of like the dissonance inside someone's head when they've gone through those emotions, that's a really tricky thing to do on screen, and that was masterful. Did you think, were you thinking of like maybe The Graduate or other films that have explored kind of the internal thinking that some of your characters have? Like, what was in your mind directing that kind of pathos?
I haven't seen The Graduate.
Oh yeah, well, there we go. Yeah.
So, I don't really know. Like, I'm not like I grew up in a house with no TV,
Yeah.
and first time I saw a movie in the theater, I was like 12. My parents were kind of hippies, so I don't think I approach like filmmaking from. I don't really feel like I know a lot about filmmaking, and I just approach it from the perspective of like an actor and the education I picked up on a set there, and like what moves me and what my gut tells me to do, which I don't know if that's. Hopefully it works again next movie, but yeah, I think I just kept like the North Star was like, is this real? Like every step of the way, and is the performance real? Is how they're texting real? Is even though I'm watching it now, I'm like, this feels like texting from 3 years ago, but in the moment it felt real. Is the music real? Like, is everything? What are they wearing? Is that what kids would actually wear? Like, I was just trying to make it authentic and real and true and grounded, and that was really my North Star. I've obviously been really influenced by certain filmmakers like Sofia Coppola and Lena Dunham are some of my favorites. I love like the air that French films allow. Like, I'm definitely influenced by a lot of filmmakers, but I wasn't like trying to sort of emulate one specific film or filmmaker necessarily with this.
That makes sense. Let's see. Anyone else have? Yeah, please.
I just want to say I really love the film. I've always been meaning to watch it, and I'm glad I got to watch it on the big screen. And I'm also Canadian, so growing up, I also it was never like a big worry of mine. Like, we only had one lockdown. It was because of like a cougar that got onto campus.
That's so Canadian.
But, so yeah, it was just really eye opening to kind of see like this is just a reality that so many people go through, and it's just so scary. And going off of the last question, I was just kind of wondering, because you did mention you have done acting with Shailene Woodley, and what was the transition point from going from acting into directing? Was it something you've always been passionate about, or like what was kind of like the turning point?
People ask me that a lot, and it's like kind of, I don't really know, but when I was acting, truthfully, I was always enjoying it. And I think what happens when you're in a small town and you are into the arts, like you like go to theater camp or like go to a theater program, and so that's sort of like the natural thing. And I had some success doing it, and so I was like, oh, this is awesome, and I really enjoyed it. But I always felt in my gut like I was seeing my peers be really fulfilled in a way that I didn't truthfully feel. And I actually worked with this actress, writer, director, Zoe Kazan, who's incredible, and we played sisters and got really close. And I had this like idea for a project, and basically I was telling her, I was like, you should like write this, whatever. And then she was like, why don't you just do it? And it was almost her giving me that vote of confidence that gave me the courage to try it. And then basically like the second that I wrote like a short film, I was like, oh, okay, everything that I've been learning on set, this makes sense for this. So I fell into the writing first, and I just knew that was what I loved and was so fulfilling to me. And then, and then I wrote that short film, and I was like, I guess I'll try directing it, and I did, and it was the same sort of feeling where my first day on set, I was like, okay, this makes sense to me way more than acting ever did. And if things go well for me, my agency, I always joke about this, I always say, like, if things go well for me, you won't see me acting again. I just really enjoy this part of it in a very different way.
All right, let's do one more here, please. Yeah.
Megan, this movie, for all the limitations you had, first seeing it on the big screen was incredible, and how polished it is, based on how all the obstacles you had going into this film is incredible. My question for you is, when you were starting this process, what was some of the biggest things? I'm sure you had a million things going through your mind that was keeping you up at night and concerning you. But what was one of the biggest things that was keeping you up and concerning about the film that you felt you hit that moment where you're like, oh, it's not an issue anymore, or it's not a big deal, and you got past it? Was there anything you could think of that was like a moment where you felt?
That's interesting. I feel like it was like I had no idea what I was doing every step of the way, right up until now. So I don't know if I ever really felt that, like, okay, I got it. But
Okay.
I think I was really nervous about, like, I didn't really know cameras and lenses. I'm not a camera buff, I don't know, whatever. And I just didn't know that much. And I thought that, like, you had to know that stuff really well to be, like, a good director. And I feel like you just have to hire people that do know what they're doing for those departments. And that was sort of my approach to this, every department head for the film. It was like, who knows what I can't be an expert in everything, but I felt like I really understood actors and really understood what they needed from me or didn't need from me, and could figure that out pretty quickly and create, like, an environment that was really safe for them to explore and play. And I'd certainly been an actor at 17 and been in situations I did not like, and been worked with directors I didn't like, and had been in great situations. So I really wanted to create that environment, and I felt like that was my strength. And I knew in my gut, like, when we had the performance, it was more like, okay, was it in focus? Did everything else work? Because I knew when I had what I needed performance-wise. That was easy for me to tell. So that was, like, my comfort zone. But then everything else, like, I would just lean on the people I trusted that did know what they were doing. And I certainly had, like, things that I liked and didn't like, but you don't need to be an expert at all the technicalities of everything. And even on this, my second film, like, it's been such a different experience because everything's in person, and now we're doing post-production, and I'm like, what's this? Like, I just ask a lot of questions and just lean on the people that do know what they're doing. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it's worked pretty well so far. So, but I am learning more about cameras. Not an expert, though.
That's great. Well, look, we want to say thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing
This was
this.
so
Yeah.